This is the Galaxy Z Fold 2. Technically it's the third because the first was never really released, and so the second Fold became the first Fold, which makes this attempt number 3 for Samsung's idea of making a phone that unfolds into a little tablet. It is $2,000, which is way too much to pay for what you get out of this thing. But having said that, I gotta tell you, I feel like the third time's the charm because I'm a little bit charmed. There are two ways to talk about the hardware on the Z Fold 2. The first is to just talk about all of the things that Samsung has fixed from the original Fold, and that list is actually quite a lot longer than I would have guessed. The main display here is made out of glass now, the hinge is way better, and the cover display on the outside is actually big enough to use. They're all huge improvements over the original. So, for example, this hinge now has 8 cams that make it a little bit stiffer. There's elastic brushes on the inside to keep the dirt out. Now, when you close it, there is still a little gap on the inside, but Samsung has added some little bits to make that gap feel smaller. They've moved the magnets around a little bit, so there's still a satisfying when you close it. The edges overall are just a little bit square. The bezels on the inside are a little bit smaller. The whole thing just feels a little bit more professional. The tolerances are tighter and everything has been refined to the point where it really feels like a well-engineered product instead of being a little bit loosey-goosey like the original one. Those cams hold the screen in place at different angles too, so you get some extra functionality there. Now, I can't promise that this is going to be more durable than the original Galaxy Fold, but it sure does feel stronger. And Samsung will provide a one-time screen replacement for $149 if you happen to break it. Now, the other way to talk about the hardware on the Z Fold 2 is to just point out that it's still a really unfamiliar object to carry around for most of us. When it's closed, it is this super thick and super heavy oblong stick remote kind of thing. I don't care what your pockets look like or what pocket you put this in, you're gonna feel it. It's just a weird big object. But when it's open, you get this very good, very big 7.6-inch screen. And there's a lot to talk about with this screen, but I just want to start with the downsides kind of quickly because I don't know, I think they're just the realities of what a folding glass screen has to be like in 2020 because physics, instead of being straight up errors on Samsung's part. So, even though this is Samsung's ultra thin glass here instead of plastic, it is still covered with a plastic screen protector. And technically I'm told that, you can go to Samsung and have them take this screen protector off, but honestly, having it on here is for the best. But that does mean that it will pick up little dings if your thumbnail hits it, and it does feel like a plastic screen. Now, this screen is also surrounded by a fairly thin plastic rail that you can't feel on the edges. There's even 2 little nubbins here that keep the screens from clacking together when you close it too hard. Finally, yes, there is a crease in the middle of the screen and you can see it and feel it when you rub your finger over it. If you're viewing the screen at an angle and the light hits it just right, it's visible enough to be a little bit annoying, but straight on, the crease pretty much disappears, sort of like notches or hole punches do on smartphone screens. You get used to it and eventually you almost forget that that crease is there. Now, having said all of that, I don't want you to get the wrong idea. I think this screen is very, very good. It's only about 372 pixels per inch or so, but that's more than enough to make those pixels disappear. More important to me is this corner right here. There is no longer a big, huge cutout for a bunch of selfie cameras. There is just this one little hole punch for a single selfie camera, which means you get the full expanse of the screen to work with and to watch videos on. But the most important thing that Samsung has done to this screen is put in a dynamic refresh rate. It goes all the way down to 11 Hertz to save battery life, or all the way up to a high refresh rate of 120 Hertz. And what high refresh rate screens do is they make it feel more like you're physically moving the pixels. And that's here on the Fold 2, but the most important part of it is that it significantly improves a big problem that I had with the first Fold, and that's jelly scroll. Pretty much all smartphone screens have this little difference in how quickly the pixels update from one side to the other when you scroll, but usually you don't notice it because on most smartphones it happens vertically from the top to the bottom. But the Fold needs to have its little bits to drive the screen on the side instead of on the bottom, so you see it more often when you're scrolling. However, switching to 120 Hz refresh rate cuts that difference way, way down. So it's really hard to see that jelly scroll unless you're really looking for it. Samsung has basically eliminated the problem by switching to a high refresh rate screen. Now this outer cover display, it's not as technically impressive. It doesn't have a high refresh rate, but that's not really a big deal. I am wildly happy that Samsung made it the full height of the Fold, which makes this screen actually useful. It's still really narrow though, so it's hard to type on, but if you just use it for those quick phone things that you do when you're out and about and I don't know, waiting in line or something, it's fine. But for anything else, I end up opening it up to get the big screen. And that's kind of the point, right? To have this big screen to do big screen stuff like gaming or watching movies or reading or multitasking. So let's just talk about the big screen experience on the Z Fold 2, because the way that I would characterize it is mixed. All right, good stuff first this time. Samsung has gotten the message that its little tablet should have a tablet layout. So you can go into the settings and select that layout for apps, which means that slightly fewer apps have that big blown up phone app look on here. But really only some of them do it when you hold it normally vertically like this. For the rest of them, if you turn it 90 degrees, you do get that nice tablet layout with multiple panes or tabs or 2 pages in the Kindle app or, the whole tablet deal. Plus, having a bigger screen for games and video is very, very good. If you are not watching it full screen, I don't know, picture in picture doesn't cover your other work, reading PDFs and docs and other things that are kind of annoying to do on your phone are really nice here. Plus, just a few apps like Microsoft's, for example, do support drag and drop between apps in multiple panes, but you really shouldn't depend on it being there. Android has a ways to go. There's also this feature that Samsung calls flex mode. See, because the hinge is strong enough to hold itself up at multiple angles, Samsung has made some software tricks to take advantage of it. So, for example, you can start a video on the outer screen, sort of flip it up to view it like that. Then you can flip it over to view it on the top of the middle screen, and then you can open it all the way up to watch it on the big screen. A few other apps do things in flex mode like Samsung's camera app, but really not enough apps support it for it to matter that much. But do you know how you always hear that Android apps are bad on tablets? Yeah. Here's Facebook, all stretchy and weird. And here's Twitter, also all stretchy and weird. And here's Instagram, it doesn't even have a tablet mode. Neither does Lightroom. The whole situation is a little bit better than it used to be with Android apps on tablets, but that's not saying much. Now, Samsung has an option where you can change the stretchiness of phone apps if you want to, but really the fix is to use Samsung's windowing system to tile apps in split screen or even like a 3-up layout. You pull this little dock here out to the side, it's like a drawer, and then you drag out the app icons to where you want them on the screen. It works really well. You can even drag apps out into the middle of the screen to make them into little pop-up windows that can then reduce down into a bubble. You can swap apps around in their panes with these little bars. You can even save combos of apps that you use often together, so you can just open up both apps with a single tap. There's a small problem with this system though. Notice that I said you use Samsung's windowing system, not Google's. Android is dumb about multi-window systems. All of this multitasking stuff is something that Samsung had to build itself on top of Android, and it does work pretty well, but you can also tell that it's like a layer above what the system understands. Plus, Samsung's system is completely different from how LG handles multi-windows or how Microsoft does it with the Surface Duo. Now, different companies doing multitasking in different ways really shouldn't bother you too much, but what should bother you is that the core stuff that the operating system should understand just doesn't work, like saving your window state when you switch between screens, or putting app pairs that you've got tiled together into the multitasking screen. When you switch to multitasking, it just goes back to being a single app because Android doesn't know that you can have 2 apps open at the same time. Now, if you're adept with Android and you understand all of these different operating system layers, it's actually not too bad, but you shouldn't have to be that good in Android to understand how all this works. And even in the best cases, if you're a nerd like me and you get all of those layers of UI, you still feel like you're constantly rearranging or relaunching things to get the layout that you want. But even after all of that, I still love this big screen. I love typing on it. I love reading on it. I love watching movies on it. Hell, I love looking at Google Maps on it. Having a big screen is great, and it almost makes the awkwardness of this shape totally worth it. Okay, let's do the classic phone stuff. Specs. It is fast. It has enough RAM to handle multiple apps at once. It's got 12 gigs. There's 256 gigs of storage, but that's not expandable, but that's fine. Battery life is good, but not amazing. You'll get a day for sure. I'm getting a little over 5 hours of screen time, but it's a big screen and I have been pushing it pretty hard. There is 5G, and maybe in a couple years you'll be glad that it's there, but right now it's 5G, I don't know. There are 2 speakers, and Samsung says that they can replace a Bluetooth speaker, and no, but yeah, they get really loud and they do sound pretty good, though I do wish there was a little bit more bass. Cameras. Don't buy this for the cameras. There is a 10 megapixel selfie camera on the inside and also on the front, and they feel a little bit afterthoughty. They're really not that great. The main camera system consists of 3 12 megapixel sensors, wide, ultra wide, and telephoto. They're tuned in the way that Samsung photos get tuned, which means that they're a little bit overzealous with brightening things up, but you're not gonna get any fancy zoom stuff or 8K video, or even, if I'm really honest, results that are quite as good as, say, a Galaxy S20. I mean, I'm getting slightly better photos out of the Galaxy S20. Here's a couple comparisons. Low light performance on the Z Fold 2 is good, and I think Samsung has actually kind of figured out low light, which I'm glad. Samsung says that in flex mode here, it can pan and zoom on you when you're recording video, but the actually neat trick on this phone though is you can hit this button right here and then use the good 12 megapixel cameras to take a selfie of yourself. You know those annoying people who take tablet photos at concerts? Well, now you could be the annoying person who takes tablet selfies. Do it. Don't be ashamed. They're great. So that is the Galaxy Z Fold 2. Should you buy it? No, it's $2,000. Only buy it if you want like a luxury phone or you want an extravagant techie thing. But do keep an eye on it, because now that it's on its second, well, third iteration, Samsung has done what Samsung does: aggressively improved the hardware to the point where it's genuinely great and done a passable job with the software. If the cost can come down, and I'm looking at you, Samsung, and if tablet apps and multitasking and that whole interface can get better, and I'm looking at you, Google, then the 4th or the 5th iteration of this phone is gonna be super popular. Like, replace the Note popular. And I think Samsung knows it too. They've hinted at a future version of this phone that's gonna have stylus support. I wouldn't turn that down, but I would rather see a price drop. Scared the cat. Hey everybody, thanks so much for watching. If you're wondering how the Z Fold 2 compares to the Microsoft Duo or even the weird LG Velvet thing, I've made a processor video of that. You can go check it out.